Today in Project Management Paradise, we are speaking with Norbert Leinfellner about how to optimize product development in medical devices. Norbert has a very varied background. He hails from Graf in Austria and is currently living in the Bay Area in San Francisco. Norbert, you've got a lot of experience under your belt. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you end up in the medical devices industry?
Yes, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I grew up in Austria, as you said, in Graz, second largest town in Austria. It has two really nice universities. One in technology, so that's where I graduated in physics, got my PhD there, and I always loved travel. And so I thought, what do you do with a PhD? So I thought, do some research. And what's a better place to do research than in Barcelona in Spain? So they have a beautiful campus and beautiful research going on. So I ended up there in the late 90s. But we also know that in the late 90s, what happened, maybe you remember, it was the kind of the dot-com boom. And the industry, especially the internet technology, software, everything about technology was just going nuts. And so, of course, that was also heard in Barcelona. And I was intrigued to actually join the industry. And so I started a job with a German company, which is big in Austria, Siemens. And Siemens is a corporation that is, you can think of it as the GE of Europe. It covers all kinds of technology and has a lot of jobs for those that want to enter the workforce, but also those that are there for a very, very long time. So it's a very, very big corporation that promises to give you a good career. So I joined them, and hey, first it was in telecom, right? Jobs that more about software, software integration, and then I had the chance to join the medical technology industry, especially medical devices, and that's where everything started for me.
So as a physicist, going down the medical devices route and the perfection that's demanded in that industry, you were kind of fairly good bedfellows at that time. And at that time, as you said as well, around the dot-com industry, there was still a boom in the manufacturing side, and particularly around the medical devices and the mass production. And I guess with further development, newer, more intricate devices. How did your background as a physicist help you in that realm?
Oh, that's a great question. I believe that physicists have a very broad kind of education training. They are trained to look at everything, not just on the problem at hand, but also a little bit around. So they learn very early on to structure the problem, to break it down into smaller pieces, to also be able to explain it well. I think this is something that came in very handy later on. If you listen to two theoretical physicists, right? They are in their domain and they just go on and on and on. But as soon as you listen to a theoretical physicist talking at a conference or in class, everything sounds so wonderfully simple. And I always admired, especially the American physicists, when they taught a lesson or had a show somewhere where they talked about a particular problem. It sounded terribly easy because they know how to break it down, to really put it up in chunks and explain those chunks and then bring them all together. And that is fascinating. I think that's what a physicist brings to the table. It's the understanding that you have to deal with complex problems one bite at a time.
Yeah, and the ability to kind of, I guess, put some sense of normality or a sequence onto all of the components that we will meet in a project. And everything we do is a project one way or another, but it's that apparent simplicity. That's the tricky part. And that might be where a program manager comes into play. Why do you think that kind of role is important in delivering projects?
Yeah, program managers are the ones that, I sometimes joke about it, they are not doing the work that the team does. What they do is they really enable, right? Those are enablers that help the team do the work really well, do it in a way that also is not effective, but also efficient. So it helps the team members to understand, first of all, again, we're back to the problem. We have a complex problem to solve. Let's break it down into chunks. And this is where you then start to do project schedules, because a project schedule is nothing else but a list of tasks with people and dates, and of course, dependencies. So the program manager does just that, comes in, understands the problem, aligns the need that the executives have, the sponsor has, with the team, breaks it down, creates a schedule with them. And then, of course, this is where it starts, right? And then the program manager is there at all times, somewhat acting as the glue for the team, bringing the team members together, make them think. I call this not just the creative thinking, but the creating thinking.
I like
So
it.
the program manager is a lot about that. He wants to make those people think and do. And then, of course, the rest is just very tactical, right? Because you have to be almost like, they call me, in my company, they call me the one that is herding the cats, which is somewhat true, right? But this is exactly where the skills come in.
Very good, because we all know that's very, very difficult to herd those cats. So coming from a huge corporation or organization like Siemens those few years ago, and into a new startup industry, and maybe you just might tell us a little bit about that. But do you perceive many differences in the role of a project or program manager within those organizations? Is it relative to scale, or is it completely different roles?
I thought when I joined the startup in San Francisco, and it's a beautiful little company that works on a very revolutionary device that's a wearable. So this is everything I ever wanted, right? It's something that it kind of the technology marry up from wearable, medical, patient safety, and algorithms and cloud storage, and there's a lot of data that we produce. So this is what I always wanted. Now, coming from a big corporation that has a huge backbone of infrastructure behind them, big pockets, they have revenue. So what I immediately saw was that a small company, it sounded very easy because they have only one problem to solve, one thing to do, and this is to get this product out. It's one product. It's not 12 or 50 or 100 products. It is one product, and they do not have a product on the market yet. So this means they don't have to take care of that product, which in the world of medical device we call sustaining engineering. You have to make sure that the device can be still manufactured. It works, appropriately in the field. It still meets all the regulations. Regulations change. So usually, when you have a lot of products on the market, you own that liability. You have to take care of your products, and for a small company, that would be a huge distraction. Imagine that half of the people have to be working in the sustaining engineering field. So anyway, coming to a small company, it's looks like paradise. There's one thing to do. Everybody knows what to do. There is one marching order. It's a small team. There is no fluff, right? And if you're well funded, then you take that kind of risk out of your head a little bit, and you just can focus on the work. So this is what I thought would happen. Now, you asked me about main differences. So of course the main difference is the focus is really there, and you don't have to bring that. However, I came in with I thought, oh, I have all this experience. I can help this company to get to the next level. I know everything about project portfolio management. I know how to do proper project risk management. I know how to do schedules, and I show them everything I know. Now, what I didn't know was they didn't want to know about this. So they didn't really ask for that. What they wanted me to do is to organize the work, to make sure that milestones are met, and that the end goal is met in a way that it's still kind of it's achievable, right? It's still a realistic goal. So it boils down to much more tactical than I thought it was, and it would be. And this is also very nice because it's the herding cats, aspect that we talked about, and that can be a lot of fun. right? So I put all my strategic and all my big corporation kind of still toolbox on the side for a little bit,
Okay.
and started to really understand what are people exactly working on, how can I help them, how can I make them work a little better, how can I show them maybe to, when they do a meeting, maybe do the meetings a little bit more efficient, faster, easier. And then when it comes to scheduling and reporting, let me do that. I know how to do that. And so with the CEO, I have this personal connection where I said, let me take care of all the reporting. People should just do the work and let me do the kind of the herding. So that was the big difference. In a big corporation, very often you have a team of project managers, right? And you very typically operate in a matrix. And so sometimes it's much easier to pull resources from here to there to do this and go back. And when you have a need, because you're stuck, very often you have the funds to just get help, right?
Yes.
In a smaller company, you just don't have the funds. You have to be much more creative. And this is what I really like about this world.
So in the larger company, you might have more domesticated cats.
That is right. That is right. Exactly.
In which to herd. And of course, no matter how well we plan things or we report on things or we schedule, things happen. And sometimes they're catastrophic, sometimes they have the potential to be catastrophic. And as you said, you can flag the risks and hopefully mitigate those before they actually occur. But how can companies, large or small, best manage these kind of black swan events that just hit from the blue?
Yeah, that's a great question. You mentioned project risk management. Risk management is also very different between small and large. Very typically, you look at your internal risks more than you like to look at your external risks. I learned that for a smaller company, especially for startups that have very little help to build up their own supply chain, let's say, or to recruit, consultants because they just don't have the financial flexibility or maybe the internal skills to do that. But what I learned, especially in a smaller company, is that you have to manage your external risks much better. And we have very, very good examples these days. We all think about supply chain these days, right? I mean, almost on a weekly basis, we get calls from our suppliers saying that, oh, we cannot deliver this part anymore because the material for it is not sourceable anymore. So we have to change the material, but this means there is a delay in getting you the part, and so on and so on. And let's not even talk about the chip shortage and the microprocessors. Those we cannot source as much as we would like to. And so managing external risks becomes incredibly important. So now let's talk about the black swans. You mentioned black swans, and black swans are those that are the extremes. So what's a black swan? A black swan is let's talk about the animal first. A black swan is an animal that is very rare, right? And there was a time, hundreds of years ago, where nobody believed there was a black swan because every swan was white. I mean, every swan you saw was white. And it's probably true in Ireland, right, Caitriona? Yeah. It's definitely true in the Bay Area. You usually see the white swans. Now, there was this one guy, was a Dutch explorer, I believe. His name was Willem the Fleming or something. He was in the late 1600s. Okay. He went to Australia and he saw a black swan. So this was the first time where the world actually woke up to the idea, oh, there could be something like a black swan. So they're actually more, I want to say, more likely than unlikely. So coming back to the project management world, this is how you need to start thinking. You think of very rare events. You think about, oh, tomorrow we cannot get this microprocessor or this one part, which is a very, otherwise standard part that is in a catalog and you can order. Now, a black swan event would be that this part disappears from one day to the other. What do you do about it? So this is something that project managers these days, or maybe a few years ago, maybe more so these days, but a few years ago, they didn't think about that as much. So black swan events wasn't in our kind of toolbox. So now we get much better at that. The pandemic has taught us that We cannot rely on a supply chain. We cannot rely on talent that is in abundance out there that you can just hire if you have a problem. We have big problems it's very difficult to hire the talent we need. We have 27 open positions. Try to fill those in the Bay Area quickly. It's very, very difficult. So the pandemic was one of the black swan events that changed our thinking.
Yeah.
And we see other global events happening these days that can equally create those black swan events. So I would suggest that program managers and their team of project managers maybe sit down and start thinking about, okay, everything we have assumed so far in our world, in our schedule, in our resource planning, in our milestone planning, is there anything internally or externally that can look like a black swan, right? Maybe it's a white swan with a black hat. And by the way, those exist. I saw them when I went to a conference in Orlando last year. I saw a white swan with black hats.
Yeah.
Have I thought about this? No, I didn't, right? So coming back to project management, they do exist. So how can we prepare for it? It's a little bit difficult to think of mitigations for it, but you will be surprised if you sit down with your team in a quiet moment and talk those risks through with the team. They will come up with very, very creative way to think about mitigations, and that is a wonderful thing to do. So I would recommend everyone to sit down, think a little deeper, and think about the black swan that you probably never saw, but one day you will see it.
Yes, they're all out there. All of these fairy tales and myths all have some foot in reality, don't they? I think anyway. Maybe that's just because we've a whole lot of legends here in Ireland, but I think they're everywhere around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so a project team, whether it's in a small company or a large company where you might have many different project teams in the various business areas, what are the cultural differences between the way they can work to look forward and look ahead? You know, are there many, say, cultural differences in the formality or maybe informality or other differences that they have?
Oh yeah, for sure. Cultural differences, they exist between geographies. They exist between different sized companies, like small and large. They also exist in different industries. So when you bring it all together, and in my very specific example, in a medical device company in the Bay Area, where you were used to having the best talent around you at all times. And I must say, my team is extremely talented, very creative. They work hard. They're super easy people. This is something I wouldn't have expected. I would have expected, it's a team of chaotic, kind of mindsets that mean good, but they just, it's very difficult to handle them, and they don't know what they're doing. In reality, culturally, I would say a small company, especially a startup, is very strong. Why? Because the mindset is focused, and the mindset is more the we. They depend on each other much more, I would say, than you would do in a large corporation. So in a large corporation, when you ask for help, you very typically go to a manager of some sort, right? To a manager of somebody that you need help from, or you go to HR, or you go to your boss. In a smaller company, you don't have to do that. You just go to the person you need, you talk to them, you figure out how you will do it, or they talk to the project manager and they sit down and find a solution. Now this creates speed. This creates also a sense of being a team, and it's much more the sense of ownership as well, right? Because then it's the person that's in the center of everything, and that creates a huge sense of ownership. So I would say those are the biggest differences. The formality in a corporation is what they are trained to, and it kind of makes sense because when you think about a location of a big company, and we have many in the Bay Area, especially in the pharmaceutical world as well, you sit in a building with maybe 1,000 other people, right? You cannot just go to one person and say, hey, can you do this for me? I mean, you can, but you should really appreciate the the overall plan and how this is managed and how the project is run, and maybe go through those hurdles first, even though it slows you down a little bit. Whereas in a small company, there's no hurdle. Just do it, get it done, and be nice about it. Right?
Yes.
So humor helps, and that's another soft skill we maybe have time to talk about, but that's, I think, is the biggest difference.
You're just bringing me there. I thought it was a great segue into talk a little bit about soft skills. So yeah, you have the structure in your larger organization. You can't just rock up and say, "Hey, Norbert, come here. I just want to talk to you about this little problem I'm having here." But even in a smaller organization, do I just rock up and say, "Hey, Norbert, I just want to talk to you for a few minutes," and I sit down and I bring out my paper and you're saying, "But Kat, I'm in the middle of," and I said, "Oh, but it'll only just take a minute." So things like that. So where the journey might be shorter in most cases, one still should employ a little respect and manners. How can we help our project management staff manage and improve their soft skills? And this is an ongoing thing, especially our work world has changed a lot recently with a lot of remote working.
Yeah, Caitriona, this is a very, very good question, but it's also a very tricky question. How can you improve on the soft skills? We all know how to manage our hard skills, and that there is no doubt about that. And we have the tools, we have the processes, we can go to class, we can read books. Awesome. Now the soft skills, I always think about it as something that you were born with, although it's not entirely true, because I think the experience helps as well, right? And so some of the soft skills I would really like to see in project managers are communication. Communication you can train somewhat, right? Because you can watch. You can watch other people. You can take away the best of in that world, and communicating well, I think, is somewhat a softer skill, but it can be learned, it can be trained, it can definitely be applied in like every day. Now, where it is a little bit more tricky is the conflict management and helping teams resolving a conflict, and hopefully it's always about the thing, never about the person.
Yes.
Is important, right? And so conflict management is also very different between small and large companies. The pathway of escalation doesn't really exist in a small company, right?
Yeah.
But just forget about going to the CEO and say, "Hey, I have a problem with this person or with this problem." He will tell me, go fix it. I mean, what do you need me for, right? Ask me if you need more money, or ask me if you need something else, but don't ask me to help with this. So in a larger company, you have, I think, more pathways to that. Stress management. Have you talked about stress management? Stress is something, and I believe in Europe the work-life balance is in a much better shape than here in the US. So stress is a little bit more prevalent here, I would say. And stress is what you make, right? Stress is what you make out of your day and out of your work. And this is something I think a project manager can really, really have an eye on, and go in where it's getting too much for some or for yourself. But this is a skill we need to develop. Very, very important in these days where everything is about speed and about efficiency and about being the first and keeping the milestones and being very tight with your money. So think about it also a little bit. This is something I would take away as very important. We already talked about the creative thinking and the creating thinking. This is super important when you're helping the teams. But I would say, Caitriona, one of my favorites is humor. Bringing the humor into work. Come in the morning, right? When you open the door, come in with a smile. This is something. This is so easy. Nobody can take that away. It's contagious, right? Of course, for a long time we wore masks, so the smile was kind of lost on everyone. But even now, I think humor is something that can help so many little problems. It breaks the ice. It makes everything easier.
Yeah.
And just be a little bit less serious when you can, be serious when you have to. That's something I would take away here.
Yeah, and a little goes a long way, doesn't it? You get, it's like a a good hybrid vehicle. If you have a little smile or a little joke or laugh or just a good atmosphere, it really helps things roll along nicely, doesn't it?
And by the way, Caitriona, the risk here is, so we talk about all the soft skills, right? It's great to have them. They make you stronger. The team appreciates it. It makes everything easier and faster. Now, the risk is that you overuse those skills. That's something that exists as well. And talking about humor, you can overuse it, of course, yes. Right? And so you have to be careful with joking. And I can tell a little story. When I came from Europe to the US, I was a walking HR violation because my jokes were mostly inappropriate, right? They're mostly about everything you are not supposed to speak about in the US. Is age, gender, religion, all other things that are, all kind of being frowned upon.
Well, yes,
so yeah,
factors.
So heads up, right? If you come to the US, you will end up doing some intercultural training.
Yes.
So yeah. Be careful about overusing your soft skills.
And you're absolutely right, because it can be a slippery slope. And there is a line, but most people are aware of it, I think, most of the time. But whilst that is a soft skill, it can have hard consequences if inappropriate. But on the flip side of the soft skills too, where you have the nice, gentler approach or softer approach, and you have that kind of collaboration or collusion. What about, we're in a large PMO and we've got a slew of potential projects coming down the pipeline, and everyone goes, but my project is better. And I go, no, mine is. No, but mine will deliver more benefits. And so, well, mine has fewer risks. Well, mine's got a higher ROI. Well, mine's got a lower investment rate. So you'll have all of this kind of butting heads, and people are not so pleasant to each other. Why does this kind of thing happen? And does it happen in a certain kind of realm, I should say?
Don't know about realm. It's what you describe is the effect of not doing a good job in project portfolio management. Because if you miss or you don't work enough on those prioritization parameters of projects, then it becomes a little bit less evidence and less data-based. It becomes more opinionated. It becomes more favorable. It becomes more personal. And this is, of course, a risk, especially when you have a portfolio of quite a few projects, right? And you're probably hinting to 10 or more. This is where you have to have a rigorous prioritization process in place. And even more important than that, you have to teach people how this is done, or make them aware how this prioritization comes about, so that we talk about data and we talk about very objective prioritization. And so again, smaller company, less of a problem. There's maybe one thing to do, maybe two things to do, maybe three different things to do. It's easier, and very often the CEO gives you the prioritization and the thing is clear.
Yes, yeah.
And that's okay. Now, as you scale, as you grow, and as you have more projects, as you have more products, we talked about sustaining at the very beginning. It's a liability. Think about all the parameters that can kind of affect the NPV, can affect your resources, can affect your, I want to say your even your strategic ability to finish all that. And so there are tools for that, as you know, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The score is all about that. But there's also a mindset that is very important, and we have to develop this early on. If we organize our work, it has to be done in a very objective way. So this is where usually friendships don't help anymore.
Yep.
This is where data helps, and I'm a very big fan of using data and facts.
Yep. You can't argue with the science, really, as we've heard a lot over the last couple of years. But it's true, black and white, binary. It's all there. No soft stuff in there. You are working now in the medical device industry, Norbert, and the pharmaceuticals and the medical areas are leagues ahead of construction and engineering firms in general in the digital transformation and managing these portfolios and moving away from the old-fashioned paper-based projects and old-fashioned kind of independent application projects. Why do you think this is so with the engineering and construction sector in particular?
Yeah, you said it well. It's that the transformation should have happened, I think, much earlier because we had the ability to do so. The tools were there. We had the infrastructure in place. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we just don't make the choice and we kind of tend to underinvest in those areas. And I don't know exactly the why. My theory is that when you and I know nothing about construction, right? Mm. I believe they have their own world where they have this brutal drive of being on time, being finishing the project exactly to the cost target or under. So those needs haven't changed. Now, at the same time, to undergo a transformation to go digital would mean you need to additionally invest, right? Now, that could be a distraction for some. It could be a distraction in terms of time. It could be a distraction in terms of resources. And that's not something that anyone goes easy about, right? And so the best thing is to plan ahead. And such a transformation is not typically overnight, although I heard in one of the podcasts that we had to do this in 1.5 days when the pandemic started.
That's right. Yes.
But in reality, if I had a choice, I would plot out a plan that looks in the future, looks what do we have to do, how do we scale, and what do we need for it, and then plan the digital transformation alongside with it. It's not something that you want to do in a vacuum because you just do it for the sake of being digital. Yeah. That doesn't get a lot of friends. It's something that needs to be done with the means to an end. And that would be my recommendation. Start early. Look at what others do. You don't have to be, the ones that are the fastest and be the one overnight, but be nimble about it. And look at your tool landscape. Look at your landscape of all the resources you're using to manage your projects today. Yeah. You can very easily find waste, right? So I would say getting rid of the waste, and very often paper-based is some kind of waste. Yeah. And so if you get rid of that and maybe replace that with a digital tool that everybody likes. I'll give you an example. We are using Slack. We're using the communication tool Slack in our company. Mm-hmm. I have not used Slack before. I have used email. I have used text. I have used, Teams or whatever we use for collaboration. But it turns out that when you use a communication tool that is hyper-focused on connecting people in seconds, this is something, when everybody uses it, this can be extremely valuable. It's very, very effective. And it's something that you don't have to listen at all times, right? You can have it on your phone, you can have it on your computer, you can have it wherever you want, and it's just there, right? And so it's like the people are just there. With an email, everything is offline, right? With a text, well, if I text you on your private phone, good luck that you look at it, right? And so anyway, so that's just a small example where you can reduce waste, for example, in communication. That's just a very easy way to think about it. But then, of course, there are other tools where you can look at how do you be better, be more nimble. I don't know why we're so much behind the curve. I think it's, again, right? We talked about black swans. It should be a little bit more long-term thinking. I think that would help all of us.
Yeah, and you mentioned this earlier on, and just in the last couple of minutes about communications, and yeah, we have to get to the end goal with our prescribed schedule and our prescribed budget, but sometimes the shortcuts can give you a bigger waste of time when you have to go back and fix them. I think, yeah. But Norbert, there's so much we could talk about, and I would love to speak with you again about some of the topics that you've brought up today. If you're game ball for that, we'll meet again in the future. But I'd really like to thank you for your time today in speaking with us on Project Management Paradise.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're very welcome.